We're up to Daf Samar Beis. We are going through the birds. We learned there were 24 different kinds of birds that the Torah lists as Talmudic birds. And we said that there are two birds, the Pedis and the Osnia, that only have one sign of kashrus. We have the Oidiv, which we translate as a crow, or the raven that has two signs of kashrus. And then we have the other birds, they all have three signs of kashrus. And the pigeon, which is the kosher one, has all four signs of kashrus. One of them is a behavior, which is that whether they are birds of prey, they're doiris, and we translate doiris according to Rashi. It doesn't even have to mean that but birds of prey. They eat with their feet and they hold the food with their feet. And the other three were whether they have a crop, whether they peel, the curcumin can be peeled from the inside and they have an extra leg. And then we had a machlekes when the Torah said kol oiriv lemina and oiriv lemina. According to Chachamim, it means literally it has to be similar to an oiriv, the same two signs. And according to Rabbi Lezer, we include a different bird called a zarzir, and he said that it doesn't have to be that exactly the same two signs. Even has two different signs. There are other birds that have only two signs of kashrus, but because they, as Rashi explained, they mill about, they hang around the habitats of the oirivim, the Torah calls them lemineihu. And the Chum disagreed that no, that the only other bird, if it's called by an oiriv, it has to be exactly like an oiriv, how the oiriv family, the same two laws of kashrus. So we are up to we're starting from Amar Meimar. So Meimar said right in the middle of the page, Meimar said, Hilchot halacha is oif haba b'simanecha toir, or oif, even though it only has one siman, it's toir, as long as you know that it's not a osnia or it's not a peres. But now he goes one step further. If there's only one siman, that siman has to be that it's not doris. That it's not doris in order for it to be kosher. That's the one siman that it has to have, and so on. You have to make sure it's not the family of peres osnia. What about Rav Nachman? Rav Nachman said that if you're a bucky, it doesn't matter what it is. If you know what it is, you know what a pedis is and what an ozni is, and so on and so forth. Good enough. So maybe this bird, if it only has one simon, might be a pedis, might be an oznia, and you're saying across the board that if it's not a doidus, and that's the simon, that's good enough. And what about Amalei Shmila? And then here, Ma'ika. What are you worried about? Mr. Pettis Bosnia, right? Most people are not experts. Maybe you don't know. Maybe it's a Pettis, maybe it's Bosnia. Less will be Yishuv. You should know they never hang around inhabited areas. They're only out in the wilderness, and therefore you don't even have to worry. Says the Gemara, Abba says, Oif Hamisarit. Now we're going to learn in today's Gemara a number of birds that we don't know what they are. Well, I for sure don't know what they are. And even though Rashi sometimes tells us what they are, most times he doesn't. Doesn't really help as much. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, oif hamisal, the bird that scratches. I'm not sure which bird that is. Kosher letaris amatera, right? Amatera needs to have a bird. One bird he sends away. It has to be kosher birds. So if this bird, the oif hamisaret, whatever bird that is kosher, that you can use it for a mitzvah. And he says, what bird are we talking about? Vezui. This is known as the sanunis lavana, the white sanunis. I'm not sure exactly what bird this sanunis is. So the Gemara and Rashi says it's ashtarak, whatever it is. Okay, but he adds one more thing. This is the white sanunis that Rabbi Lezer and the Chamim would argue about. That they argue. The Gemara will explain what he means by that. We just had a machlek of the Chamim. Kol Chamim has to be that in order for it to has to be exactly the same. The two signs as let's say the oiriv. Even if it doesn't have exactly the same two signs, other two signs, if it mills about, it's not kosher. So this follows. He said this is the machlekes of the chachamim, and it would seem that I'm saying it's kosher, so I follow the view of the chachamim. So now we can have two versions of understanding what exactly Ameima is going to say. Ameima says that in the savnunis levana, there's white, and there's also a yellow belly. You can have a yellow belly or a white belly. So, Omar Meimer, if it was actually white, Kuli Amale Pligi, everyone will agree the Shari is permitted. That's a kosher bird. Keep Pligi, well, they're arguing Bidireka Karsa has a yellow belly.
Another meaning of Yorek, we have already three.
Yeah, yellow, green, and blue here probably means yellow. Rabbi Lezer Osir, Rabbi Lezer says that it's aser. It's two simonim, like the oidiv. And the Rabbanan say it's not the same two simonim, and therefore it's permitted. The hilchos of the halacha is like Rabbi Lezer comes along to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that it's a kosher bird. Obviously, he's following the Chachamim. However, Mazutra Masnoch has a different way of understanding a memar. If it's a yellow belly, everyone agrees that it's osir. Everyone agrees that it's osir. It has a white belly. Rabbi Lezer says it's still osir because it has two simonim, even though it might be different than Noidav, and Rabbanan it has a different species, and Rabbanan matir, and the Hilchas like Rabbanan the Sharalocha, like the Rabbanan that were matir, Rabbi Yehuda follows the Rabbanan, where that's the view that a white belly is permitted. He says, if you tell me that arguing about on the white belly, but everyone agrees the yet belly is us. So when we said before. When Mazuta said before that this involves the machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Chachamim, we're talking, in other words, the white belly is what they're arguing. I'm talking about the white belly, and I'm saying that the white belly is kosher for mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda is saying that it's kosher for mitzvah because he holds like Chachamim. Is if you hold him on the chibra karsa pligi hainu diktoni, that's what he says. The white sabnunis. Makes sense. The whole argument is by yellow, and he's saying this involves a machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Chachamim. And Rabbi Yehuda follows Chachamim that is kosher. Why call it the white lavnunis? It's the yellow lavnunis that he's talking about. Mahi savnunis lavana.
Which bird is it?
It's not white. Why are you calling it savnunis lavana? He said this savnunis lavana is the argument of Chachamim. They're not arguing about the white one. They're arguing about the yellow one. Says the Gemara, no. Even the yellow can be called white. Why? La'afuke. In contrast, the one that hangs around the house is the uchra that's black. If there's another species in that bird which is black, so then the yellow one you'll call white. Compared to exactly. So therefore, and that's what he was referring to. So the Gemara writes. Omar Rechava. Says Rechava, Omar Rebbe Yehuda, so the name of Rebbe Yehuda, that Chase is interesting, makes a comment that, the difference between the Amoraim and Bavel and the Amoraim and Eretz Yisrael is all called Rebbe, because they all have smicha, and in Bavel they're called Rav, because they didn't have smicha. The smicha that goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu, which can only be done in Eretz Yisrael. So he wonders why over here it says Rebbe Yehuda when we're talking about Rebbe Yehuda the Amorah. So Taisa gives two explanations. One is that Rechava wasn't certain whether he was Rebbe Yehuda the Tana or Rabbi Yehuda the Amorah. And we have another Gemara where it says that Rechava is somebody that is so particular in everything he says that we can trust what he says. The Gemara talks there about a stuff couple, how there was in the base of Mikdash, how it was set up. Whether he was talking about the names, Taisa then says, I don't think it was the Gemara was so excited about the names that he was so careful about. It more about the wording he uses, L'shon Rav. Or he loved his teacher in Bavel so much that even though he was Rav Yehuda, to him he was Rebbe Yehuda.
He's Rav Muvak.
Exactly, so he called him Rebbe. Okay,
my teacher.
Exactly. Omar Rebbe Yehuda said, Tassil, this bird called Tassil, it's a kind of a dove or a pigeon. Now we had before the Gemara. There's a Bnei Yoina. The title called Bnei Yoina. Always Bnei Yoina. Bnei means young. So a Bnei Yoina, a pigeon can only be kosher if it's very young. The moment that it matures, gets gold over here, he cannot use it anymore in the base on the Mizbeach. Then we had the Torah. The Torah is a turtle dove that's older. It can only be used if it's mature. If it's older, not young. So this tassel bird is like a yoina, is pasul mishum toiden, is disqualified if you bring it up like a turtle, you bring it up as mature. But it'll be kosher if you brought it up young, like a bnei yoina, because it falls under the family of pigeons. Now the other bird called atzifi, again, I don't know what these birds are, but atzifi, and toidin shel rechava, and that's what they were known by. The toidin, the turtle doves of rechava, they're kosher when mishum toidin. Only if you bring them mature like a toidin. But if you bring it up young like a pigeon, it is possible. So Moshe Rav Daniel, but Rav Katina, the son of Katina, asked a question that says, Kola oifet, all the birds. Poislin b'meichatas. If you prepare the water of the meichatas, and the din is that you're not allowed to do any work with it whatsoever. If a normal bird comes and drinks some of that water, and then they split it back in. So the water had another purpose. It was to fill the bird. If that water falls back in, which it does, that ruins the mechatas. It ruins the mechatas. So all the other birds, paisel mechatas, if they drink any of the water out of the mechatas, that water had a malacha. It's called a malacha because it had another purpose to feed or to drink to the bird, and they always pours right back. Some of it pours right back in, and therefore it is possible. Chutz min hayona. The only exception is the yona. Why the yona? The pigeon mipnei shemoitzetzes. All the other birds they first store the water in their beak, in their lower beak, and then what happens is some of the water runs back out. They fill it up to the top, and some of it runs back down. That's malacha. But the yona just draws it out, sucks it out, and therefore nothing comes back in. The emis, according to you, listen chutz me yoina v'tassel. Exception is yoina and the tassel, another bird. Now, L'chaydim could have answered that tassel is a yoina, unless it's not exactly a yoina. It's a different bird, but has similar features to yoina.
It's a species.
Exactly. So then, if the way you take Lashon Rashi literally, it's the family of yoina. So why can't we just say that the brayso when it says chutz me yoina, and it's all of its inherent species. So it's not really a yona. It has the features of a yona and the legal status of a yona, but it's not in Mitzias. It's not really exactly a yona. So the Gemara is asking, so why doesn't the Baraisa then include tassel? So you must say, why tassel is different. Why? The yona draws out the water, and that's it. Nothing goes back in. This tassel bird, on the one hand, it sucks the water out, just like a yona, but it's some of it pours back out. Now the problem with that is twofold. Now, either it's a malacha because because some of the water it drew out, so the water had another purpose to feed this tassel, and then it went back in. Plus, some of it spit got mixed in because remember, it's not like the other birds that have a lower beak where they store the water. This goes into the mouth and then went right back in. So you have in the mechatzas, apart from mayim chayim and spring water, you also have spit from a bird, and so that's why it's no good. If you do it further, we're talking about these birds that we don't know what they are. Ravida says, Hani Kufshini Tsutsaina. He says these birds, again, Kufshini are titled from Tsutsaina. Now, we'll see, the Gemara doesn't know whether Tsutsaina is the name of a place. So you're talking about the birds from this place, or Tsutsaina is a description. That's how it's known. It's called the Tsutsaina birds. And the big difference if it's called the Tzatzayna bird, that's a description, that's its name, or it comes from there, as we'll see. It's Shadin Legab Mizbeach. They are kosher Mizbeach. The Hein Toidin Shel Rechava. This is the same bird we learned before, that these are the turtle doves of Rechava. Makes us a question. We learned in a few places already. We that azoiv. You need the azoiv, which is the hyssop, and we use the Torah use the azoiv in a few places by the paraduma, to prepare the paraduma, to sprinkle the paraduma on the person. By the Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim, they were told to use the azoiv to sprinkle the blood on the doorposts. So we learned azoiv v'loi azoiv yavan. The different commentators argue whether it's Yavan from Greek or Yun or some description of Azav. So this Azav is called a Shem Levi. It has a name that escorts together with, an associate name with the original name. So Azav Yavan. When the Torah says Azav, it's only an Azav that has no other description. Not those that are known as Azav Yavan. It's like a different species. V'loy Azav Kochli, if that's what it's known on, the blue Azav. V'loy Azav Raimi, the Roman Azav. V'loy Midbody, the wild Azav. V'loy Kol Azav Sheyesh L'Shem Levai. Any Azav that has to always come with another name cannot be used. You can only use the hyssop known as Azav, nothing else. So the question is, the Gemara right now thought that when you call the kufshni, the turtle doves, so tiny is a description. So how can you tell me that you can use them as bech? The Torah only says b'nei yena and Torah. This. Anything that had other names, the names changed before Matan Torah, and yet the Torah deliberately only omits those names. The Peter title of Torah says Ezoiv, and you already had before Matan Torah Korban Pesach. They're already in Mitzrayim. They had to use the Ezoiv to sprinkle the blood on the doorposts. And yes, Shem by Apostle. The Torah clearly it was already around those names, and yet the Torah they said no. I only want an Ezoiv. I don't want this kind of Ezoiv, that kind of Ezoiv, only an Ezoiv. So then is Vahani, sorry, so therefore, possible. For Hashem Levi, it is possible. Because say the makbid only I want a vanilla azor, nothing else with it. The honey and these loy nishtanu shmon koydem matan Torah. Mashenkin the kuvshin and all that we didn't have before matan Torah, and therefore the Torah said bnei Yeina Torah doesn't mean dafka that has that name and not an associated name with it. Rava says no. Rava says Tzutzayin is not a description; it's the name of the region where it comes from. Hani kuvshin Tzutzayin de basrayu stomach karlu, and the best proof is if you lived in Tzutzayin, you wouldn't say, give me a turtle dove, a Tzutzayin turtle dove.
Just give me stomach.
Give me a turtle dove. Which proves that Tzutzayin is a geographical name rather than an adjective or descriptive name. Vice is that the Yavan bird in Yavan, they were still, if Yavan is Yavan, they would still call it, the A's of Yavan. Yavan, even in Yavan, they would say, give me a Yavan Azov. Or in Roimi, they would say, give me a Roimi Azov. So therefore, it's not a geographical thing. Something what about who said Hani Karzi, these grasshoppers, the Bay Chilfi, if they come from the Russia's Shodu. The Karbi, if they hang around the cabbage patches, Asidi it is also different species. Again, these are just facts. These are all traditions. There's no logic behind it. That's just how it is. Omar Ravina says, not only that, Umalkinan alayu mishum sheretz ha'oif. In other words, it's not because we don't know what the din is by the cabbage patch, whether it's a really grasshopper that's treif or is a kosher. No, it's definitely treif, and you'll get malchus because you're eating sheretz ha'oif. Omar Ravina says, Tzreida is shoddy. That kind of bird is permitted. But barda is asa. How are you going to remember which? They sound pretty much the same. They just a difference of beis or tzaddik. The semonach to remember it. Bar minei marda. Get rid of it. Sorry, bar minei. Get rid of it. The word barda is like bar minei. To remember the memories is harder than to remember the originals. It's easier to remember barda is also that's it. Remember barda, make you believe it's bar minei, 2 words. Anyway. They had a phenomenal memory in those days, obviously. The process of association is very different than today. Marda, there's another.
They're more familiar with these words.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
We use words that are familiar to us, that's easy to remember also.
No, it's not the same word. Barda and bar mina is not exactly the same word. So you have to remember.
They're creating like a kunz, the language, the play on words.
That's how they, in all these lahavdil today, they teach you how to memorize things. It's all by the process of association. Use other things to align them with, and that's how you remember.
Just that we don't know these words. So.
That's true. Anyway, Omar Rav Yehud, Marda is a suffix. Omar Rav Asi, Shmoinus Sveikis. And Gemara will explain why the Marda bird is a suffix. Why is it a suffix? Very interesting. Rav Asi says there are 8 birds. There are 8 birds that actually have a suffix if they're kosher or not. What are they? Okay, I cannot tell you what they are, but I'll just tell you what the Gemara says. Choyve, Choyge, or Chuge, Chuge, Suge, Vahanune, Tushleme, or Marda is one of them. And Kuchlina Ubar Nafcha. Maishikai, why they're all suffix? What's the suffix here? Open it up and see if they have the simonim or not. Oifas to Hoidin Kurkiv and Nikla. One of the simonim are that it has a gizzard and that you can peel off the inner membrane from the kurkuva. That's the sign of one of the signs of kashrus. The tmein and the tmein, the non-kosher birds, kurkuva niklev, you cannot peel it off. The problem is these ones you could, but not with your hand, with a knife. How do we treat that? Hani kurkuva niklev b'sakina. You can peel them, but with a knife. And therefore, the question is that considered peeling or not? For Edi Gemara, Vahi Bar Avza, there was this chicken, or Bar Avza, there was this kachka, this duck. A Bar Avza is a duck. The Have Bei Mar Shmuel, that was in the house of Bar Shmuel. Dula Have Komikal Kukuvina. You couldn't. I guess there was a whole bunch of those ducks. They couldn't peel the gizzards. What they did was should place it in the sun. The kivun the rafi, and in the sun it became sort of more tender. Iklif, they were able to peel it with the hand. So we see from here that what, even though you can't peel it straight away, but the fact that they ultimately can peel is good enough. Think about that's no proof at all. Some kirafi equal the other. After it sat in the sun for a while, they were able to peel it with a hand. Even when it's rough, even when it's loose and tender, you still need a knife, and that's why it's a suffix. These 8 birds are a suffix. Says the Gemara, Tarnagoyla, the Agma, a male Tarnagol, Agma from the swamps, from the pools of water is Chad Mishmoina Sveikasu behind Mardu. That's one of the 8 Sveikas, and that's called Mardu. So you cannot eat the male. The hen you could, but the male you can't. Omar Papa says Tanagoy, the Agma, it's actually us because of the suffix. But Tanagoy to the Agma Shadia. And how you remember the male is treif or suffix, and the female is kosher. Remember is Amoini v'lo Amoinis. So when you read Amoini, what's first that comes to your mind? Oh, there's chickens. It's amazing.
The first time you see a chicken, you think of the.
The din is that you're not allowed to marry, they cannot join the Jewish nation, the members of Ammon and Moav, but the females can. So Ammon, and the reason is actually because the females had nothing to do with the fact of not feeding the Yidden, and the males did, which means the males had a terrible traits in them, and the females did not have those terrible traits. And that's so, and the Ramban says that's the basis for treif, not eating treif because it has terrible characteristics. We don't want you to internalize those characteristics. So male, it's only the male that has the bad characteristics, not the female. So Marema Darshan. Tarnegol, now this is a very interesting thing. Tarnegol to the Agma Asida, that he darshaned that even though we just said that the hen of the swamp is permitted, nevertheless he says it's usher. Why? Because Chazuya, he noticed the dars of achlu. We said before that if you only have one sign, the one sign that the bird must have is that they're not birds of prey, that they're not doiris. And he observed there was actually doitis. That's how it ate. V'hainu geirusa. That's the bird known as geirusa. Now this is very interesting. So Rashi says, based on the Gemara, a very important thing, and it's a very important Rashi. So let's just do the Rashi on the side of the Gemara here. Chazuya the dars of achli, but right in the middle of the Rashi, about 5 lines above the wide lines. So Rashi is like this: Umetoich she'ein bekiim behem. We don't know what birds are birds of prey, which was not. Needly. It appears to me, the oif habola fanenu, any species of bird that comes before us, yeshlema, we can say that shema yidris, that may be. How do you know it's not a bird of prey? The hachtan to go to the agma. Look at this bird here, the hen of the swamp hen. We assumed that it was kosher. Only later, obviously, it wasn't doitus all the time. Otherwise, they would have seen it straight away. It means, generally speaking, it was not doitus, but when they observed it for a while, suddenly they noticed doitus. You should not eat any species of bird unless we have a tradition. That our ancestors said, yes, this is kosher. If it was not a tradition, we should be chayshish. But we could rely if there's a Mercedes, we'll say later on.
So is this Rashi the basis of
exactly the Turkey? Exactly.
These questions.
The whole controversy of Turkey was exactly this Rashi because there's no Mercedes in Turkey. Interesting, they say the word Turkey is a Hebrew word. When the Columbus came to America, the doctor on the ship was a Yid. And when he saw this big bird, which he never saw before, he called it Turkai, which in Hebrew is a bird. So he, and that's the origin of Turkey, and so on. So the Shalom HaKadosh, for example, left a legacy that none of his descendants should eat turkey. But there's always a controversy. Today, so what happens if you have a Mercedes, but the Mercedes is based on a non-Mercedes? Because we know. Yeah, so interesting how the turkey became kosher. So I guess they observed it and they noticed it had all the simonim and it's not a bird of prey. Even though someone told me that he was in a farm in Etzisrael and had turkeys and he saw that it was quite vicious. But remember, Rashi says that the definition of doidus is that it eats with its claws or holds the food with its claws rather than just with its mouth, which the turkey doesn't. So interesting, but that's very important Rashi, which is brought down in Shulchan Daf. Okay, let's continue the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Rav says, Shavar and Drapta, the name of a bird called Shavar and Drapta, is permitted. Peter's and Drapta also. That bird, very similar name, but it's Peter's is also. How you remember? Visimana, Peter's is she. In our generation, there's a man called Peter's who's a terrible person. So every time you say that you think the word Peter's, think of that Russia, and you'll know you cannot eat it. Bunya, another bird called Bunya is permitted, and Parva also, and Parva is forbidden. The Simonach, remember it, Parva Amgusha. Parva was a wizard, and from back in the base of Migdash, we have the Shema Parva, named after him, having more humans, and obviously, when we get there again, the next cycle, wonder why we call a section of the base of Migdash after him. Amara Papa, said a Papa. A bird called murder, zogid, if it stands up vertically, that's how we eat shari. That's a kosher bird. Sagid v'achil, if it bends down to eat, also it's treif. Must be a different species. The simanach, and how you remember? Because so you shouldn't bow down to a god. Bowing down is now. There's another pussy you have to bend down to the Eibishter, but you're going to remember the pussy that don't bow down. To remember that eat that bird. Omar Shmuel says, Shasya Chamra, the bird called the drinking of the wine, Asa. The Simanach, you remember, Koyin cannot serve the base if he intoxicated. But Omar Shmuel said, Mazga Chamra, if somebody, the other bird known as the Mazga Chamra, the one who mixes the wine, Asida, that is Asa. But Bas Mazga Chamra, the bird known as the Bas Mazga Chamra, Shai is permitted. How you remember that? V'simonach yafe koich ben mikoich, which we had a little bit of a few weeks ago. That yafe koich ben mikoich, the koich ben, that the child is better than the father. The child is kosher. Amar Rabbi would have said shakitna, this bird known as shakitna. Now, and within that you have different species. Arich shaki has long legs. V'sumke, and it's red. Shaya, that is permitted. V'simonach, and you remember it. It's permitted. Murzima, because there's other bird called Murzima. It's kosher. This bird's also kosher. But gutse, if the other species of this bird, shakitna, that gutse that has short legs with sumke and is red, asidi, with simanoch. You remember, nanus, a midget, puzzle. A kohen who's a midget is puzzle to do avoid in the base hamikdash. Ariche shaki, what happens if it has long legs? The yuroiki, but it's green. You know, it's not red, but green. Asid it's usher. And you remember that because we learned a while ago that Yereke, the innards became green, psulin fell down and the innards became by a fire, and the innards became green. Psulin is possible. Okay, we'll stop over here and see tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.